So it should now start recording. So hello everyone. We are Dia Alwadi, an orthopedic resident from Jordan.
Francesca Barile, spine surgeon from Italy.
Jana Schader, spine fellow from Switzerland, Zurich.
And we are all new members of the new AO Spine Youth Club. Welcome to the Expert Insight series, where we interview worldwide expert spine surgeons who generously share their professional and personal experiences with us.
In this interview, we are honored to be joined by Dr. Dr Vaccaro. He is a world-renowned spinal surgeon whose contributions to the field have been very significant. Dr. Vaccaro is the president of Rothman Orthopedic Institute and the Richard H. Rothman Professor and Chair of Orthopedic Surgery at Thomas Jefferson University. With over 3 decades of experience, he has authored more than 800 peer-reviewed articles and numerous textbooks that serve as foundational resources for medical professionals globally.
Dr. Vaccaro's pioneering work in spinal surgery has not only earned him a reputation as a leading surgeon in his field, his dedication to patient care, research, and education continues to shape the future of spinal health and orthopedic surgery. So join us as we go through his fascinating career and exploring his journey, his innovations and insights that have driven the evolution in spinal surgery and improved countless of patient life.
So good morning, Dr. Alexander, and thanks for accepting our invitation. Now we would like to start, thank you. So now we'd like to start by asking you, now that we are speaking at 6 a.m. Philadelphia time. So could you please just tell us, how do you start your usual day and what's your daily routine as a spinal surgeon?
Sure. So what happens in our American training system, you learn, in my generation, because I'm 62, you learn not to sleep very much. So in my training, we went through like every other night call or every third night call where you work all night long and then you have to work the next day. They've changed those rules now. Now in America, you can only work 80 hours a week. But in the past, there was no limits. So when I was an intern, we would work all night long, and then we would work to 10 o'clock at night the next day. So it screws your mind up, and it's unhealthy. And when I became a young attending, when I graduated my residency program, my fellowship, I was on call for spinal cord injury. We have a very busy spinal cord injury center at Thomas Jefferson University. And I also took trauma call, regular appendicular pelvic trauma call. And I was always getting called. So what happened over time is that you age quickly, you get sick often, and then you wake up early. So I go to bed about 9:30, 10, but I always wake up at 3:30. Like I have a biological clock that just wakes up at 3:30 in the morning. So I got used to it. At first I hated it. Then I got used to it. So I wake up in the morning and I always go to the gym. And I built a gym in my house. So I work out in the morning. And then I have my first business call every morning at 5 a.m. And I worked with my CEO. So Monday through Friday, we don't speak at 5 o'clock in the morning on Saturday and Sunday. But we do that. And I'm in the car at 5 o'clock in the morning going to work. And I get to work at about 5:30 in the morning. And I see the patients with the residents and fellows at 5:30 in the morning. And then I start operating early. As a chairman, they give me like a 6:30 in the morning OR time. And I do a staggered room. So I start one room. And when I finish the key elements of that procedure, I go to another room. And then I go back and forth. So that's my typical surgical day. On a non-surgical day, we usually have educational meetings. Like on Tuesdays, I meet with the spine fellows. We do lectures. On Mondays, I meet with all the medical students doing research. So every day that if I'm not operating, I'll do a meeting, and then I'll operate, and hopefully I'll get done early. I do between 4 and 6 spine surgeries a day. It's 3 days a week. So 4 to 6, 3 days a week. And then I do my meetings. My meetings start at anywhere from 2, 3, 4 o'clock. And then I'd go home and I'm with my family, but I always do a 7 to 8 o'clock business meeting every night, 7 to 8 o'clock. And those are the people out of town. And I usually meet at a local restaurant. So rather than at my house, I just drive 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and I have a dinner meeting. So that's a typical week. And at my level now, on Saturday and Sunday, it's just, I just do business. I don't have to take trauma call anymore. So I don't have to come in anymore on the weekends. The only time I operate on the weekends is if it's an emergency on a personal patient of mine. But I usually, maybe I do 2 hours of business calls a Saturday and 2 hours on Sunday, but that can change. But that's my average boring, that's a boring week, but that's my average week.
So thanks for sharing all this information. Now, adding to all the things that you have mentioned, I think you have spent the last 2 days just trying to organize this interview also. So
well, you and I were supposed to speak. Friday, I had to go to Alabama for a meeting. So I did office Friday, and then we had Hurricane Debbie. I don't know if you saw in the news. It was pretty bad. But things are better now.
Yeah, hopefully everything is going to be fine. So as we are interested to know more about your career, we'd like to hear more about your childhood, your roots, your hometown. So if you please can share some of this information with us.
Sure. So my dad's father was originally from Italy, and he came over Vaccaro. He was from Campobasso, Italy. I went back to visit, and he came over. And then my mom's parents were German and Irish. So my mother's name was Schmidt. That was her father's name. So they came from Germany and Ireland, and my dad came from Italy. And I was born in New York, and then moved to northern New Jersey. And at the age of 17, I was one of 6 kids. I have 5 brothers and sisters. So, and then then I went to Boston College, and then I went to Georgetown Medical School. And then I did an internship in general surgery at Cedars-Sinai in Beverly Hills, California. And then I ended up coming back to Thomas Jefferson for 4 years as a resident. That was a big spine institution. And then I did the Steve Garfin Spine Fellowship at the University of California, San Diego. And then I became as an assistant professor in 1993 at Jefferson. And then I just, climbed through the ranks, and then I became a full professor of neurosurgery and orthopedics, and got a PhD and got an MBA. And then I am what I am today. I'm now the president of the Rothman Institute. I'm the chairman of orthopedics. So that was my academic journey. I have 4 kids. I have Alex. That's my name. That's my oldest son. Alex, Juliana, Christian, and Mia.
Please send our warm greetings to them. So, as you said, you have mentioned how you started your career, but could you please tell us why did you choose spinal surgery? Now, there are two, let's say, 2 sayings in the world that you either choose your specialty or the specialty will choose you. So, which one you usually agree with? And please tell us why did you choose spinal surgery?
So I like that saying, by the way. I like that saying. So your environment does choose who you are. So when I went back to Thomas Jefferson, there was a book written by Rothman Simeon called The Spine. Now, at your level, have you ever heard of the book The Spine by Rothman Simeon? Have you ever heard of it? You may not have.
No.
It's in like the 5th edition or 6th edition. So when I was an intern at Cedars-Sinai, that was a famous book. And then when I got back to Jefferson, there was a doctor by the name of Jerry Kotler, Cotler. Now, again, it saddens me when I get older and none of the young surgeons ever hear of these people, because did anyone ever hear of Kotler, Jerry Kotler, Cotler? Probably not. So he was a superstar. Now, he was an unusual man. I was on call the first weekend when I was a first-year orthopedic resident, and we had 4 cervical spine dislocations come in one day, because it was a regional spinal cord injury center. So it was in Southeast Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. So from the New Jersey beach, all the injuries would come in from Southeast Pennsylvania. They would come in from Northern Delaware. They would come in. So it was just every day we would have 3 to 5 spinal injuries come in. Just there would be fixed wing, helicopter, ambulance. And I watched this man who was an old man. Now I got to be careful when I say old man, because I'm an old man now. So I don't know. He had to be the 60s, and he would come in and he would help me nonstop. And I looked at him, I go, God, I hope I'm not doing that when I'm his age. But he was old, and the guy worked so hard. And then I had a spine fellow that year by the name of Howard On. Now, has anyone heard of Howard On? AN? Anyone on this phone? No, nobody. Did you? Did you hear him? So Howard just retired last year from Roche in Chicago. So he was my fellow, and the guy was he's a great spine surgeon, a great thinker. He lived in my building, and he and I would do spine surgery together all day long. Like he would operate with me, and he would let me do now I want you to keep in mind, I was a first-year orthopedic resident, and he taught me how to place sublaminar wires. Like back then, pedicle screw, we didn't do thoracic pedicle screws back then. It wasn't invented yet. It was like we had pedicle screws in the lumbar spine. They were called VSP plates. Art Steffi invented them. He just invented them. They were just invented. So no one put them in the thoracic spine. No one put them in the cervical spine. So he would let me do everything. Pedicle screws, sublaminar wires, with me. He would teach me. I'd do it with him very carefully. And I just fell in love. And then he taught me how to do research. So I became a spine surgeon because of Jerry Kotler and Howard On. And then I just wanted to be one. So my first year in orthopedics, and I just did it. And so they taught me the ethics and the tenets of research and all that. And I never stopped. And then when I was graduating, the best spine fellowship in the country at that time was Steve Garfin at University of California, San Diego. Plus, San Diego is a great place to go. You guys all have to visit San Diego. It's like really, really a great place. And I did my fellowship there with him. He was great. And then I did it with another a fellow, a good friend of mine, Gaetano Scuderi from Florida. And I just loved it. And I came back, and Jefferson, I've only had one job, Thomas Jefferson. And that's kind of weird that in America, most people have multiple jobs. They just, after a couple of years, like 70% of people change their first job after 2 years. You do it like in America, we have to be in the same job for 2 years, take the boards. You take the written boards and the oral boards. But I've never left. And I always thought I would leave. I'd get a chairmanship someplace because I wanted to be a chairman, and I would just leave. But my wife never wanted to leave Philadelphia, and she never wanted to leave. So I said, okay, I guess I'm never going to leave. And I just stayed. And then I got the chairmanship at Thomas Jefferson. So I was fortunate. That's how I became a spine surgeon. And we now have 4 spine fellows, and they're great. So I've got a great spine team. All my partners are great. They're enthusiastic. They like to do research. They like to do complex spine surgeries. So as a team, we've got a great spine team. I couldn't be happier. I mean, you have your ups and downs. Don't get me wrong. Life is a roller coaster. Have your ups and downs, but it's been a great place for spine surgery. Things have changed dramatically. I mean, it's unbelievable how things have changed. And we always hope they change for the best, but we always seem to survive. So remember, we always survive. We may not like change because no one likes change, but spine surgery has changed a lot since I started. 1993 was my first year.
1993.
A long time.
A long time. Actually, I was born in 1993.
I know. That was after I finished all my training. That was my first job ending.
So it's a long journey. So after you have mentioned this long journey, I know this is a usual question, but we would like to hear the answer from you. So, as young surgeons who are interested in spine surgery, we just need to know more about the pros and cons of being a spine surgeon. So, please, if you can share some of these, we will really appreciate that.
Sure. So we all go through generational changes. Like you're probably Generation Z. Is that how you would classify yourself, Generation Z, right? Or real millennium? Did you guys know what you? But like, I'm a baby boomer. What would you be?
I really don't.
Yes. Yeah, maybe.
So, and the good thing about different generations is that you have different types of desires and goals. Like we came from a crazy era where everyone just worked all the time, and it wasn't really that healthy for a family. So baby boomers, it's the post-war generation. We just worked all the time. So who suffers? Your spouse suffers and your children suffer, and you probably suffer because you're working all the time. Your generation is more in tune with a better lifestyle, which is great. So the first thing is that I'm happy for is that the training is more humane. Your training is more humane. They're not making you stay up all night long. Like now, the residents, if they stay up all night long, they automatically get the next day off. Or we have what we call a night float. We have someone who comes in at night and just works a night shift and then goes home. And that's good because then you're normal, you can sleep, you can exercise, you can have time for your family. So that's the number one thing. So that's great for spine surgery. The pros of spine surgery is that you really have an impact on the quality of life. So, and you'll see it, and you probably see it now because you're all residents and fellows and attendings, you're young attendings. A simple thing like disc herniation causing miserable leg pain where they can't walk, within 15 minutes, you have changed that person's life because you took the disc off the inflamed nerve. If you have someone with a spinal cord injury that's in Asia C, maybe in Asia B, and you take the pressure off, that person can walk again. So just take your time to appreciate the dramatic effect you have on someone's quality of life. So that's the most important thing. So, and you see that with, if you're a hip surgeon or knee surgeon, you're dealing with arthritis, people can walk again. But spinal cord injury and spinal radiculopathy, it is not that complicated once you learn how to do it to change someone's life. All you have to be is know the anatomy and practice your trade, and you become a blessed healer. I mean, it's unbelievable. So that's great. So that's the pros of spine surgery. Two, there's so many different types of spine surgery. So you don't have to be a deformity surgery. I mean, I do deformity and I do everything else. And when I'm in a big deformity case and it takes forever, I always say to myself, I'm getting too old for this because this is a big case. Like you have to do a multi-level, like I do adult deformity. This week, it was a 5th revision case where I had to decompress the thoracic spinal cord at multiple levels. It takes forever to carefully, and then you have to instrument from the upper thoracic spine down to the pelvis, then you have to do an osteotomy. And then I'm saying to myself, I'm too old for this because that's a lot of work. Or you can be an MIS surgeon and do endoscopy, or you could do a mini open procedure where you're not in the operating room, or you could do a single level anterior cervical decompression or fusion or arthroplasty, and you're in the operating room for 30 minutes to an hour, and you're never tired. So I like the variety of spine surgery because it's not, if you're a knee surgeon or a hip surgeon, you're doing knee surgery and hip surgery. But spine, every single case is different, complicated, challenging, and it never stops. And you will always have business because people are getting older, and people are hurting themselves. And then different generations, like when I was younger, there was a lot of violence in the inner cities of America, so we were doing all these gunshots to the spine. Now everyone's immunocompromised and older. Now I see a lot of spinal infections. Like every 10 years, the pathology seems to change. And now we're dealing with complex spine infections. And then people are getting older, and now we're seeing osteoporotic compression fractures, and we're seeing odontoid fractures, and we're seeing severe, vertebroplanar injuries. So it always changes. So the pros, again, are there's a variety of different pathologies to treat. The business is there. You'll always be busy. But that's the benefit of it. The downside is not a downside within the trade. The downside is the healthcare economics. That's the only downside. Spine surgery is expensive. So you need a facility that has the appropriate operating rooms and beds and materials, and it's getting more expensive every year. So it all depends on what society will pay for. And every society has their own cost utilities and what they're willing to pay. And that's the challenging thing, because technology is expensive. And we're moving into image guidance, we're moving into robotics, we're moving to AR, VR, and those are add-on costs to an operating room. And an individual can't afford to pay for that. Like you and I can't, no matter how wealthy you are, it's expensive to have spine surgery. So if the country that you're in doesn't want to pay for it, then that's a headache. So and you need spine surgery. So that's what I'm worried about. And then the last thing, the other con is you got to do a lot of spine surgery to be good at spine surgery. Got to do a lot to be good, like anything else. It's that old saying, you have to do something 10,000 times. So, if you go out and society won't let you do more than 1-2 cases a week, it's challenging to get really good at something. So I was fortunate that I was in a center that had so much spine surgery to be done that you can practice and practice. And practice is important. Practice is important. And then the last pro is that we haven't figured out anything spine surgery yet. We haven't figured out how to cure paralysis. We haven't figured out how to regenerate the nucleus pulsus. So again, I'm saying the word stem cells and spinal cord regeneration, but we may be saying something else in the future. So the opportunities for research are phenomenal. So overall, it's an exciting field that will never bore you. You'll never get bored. You'll always be challenged. And then the last thing that may not affect some people on this phone is the medical legal environment. It's a dangerous field. And if something does go wrong, then you have that worry, which is everyone's worry. So you have to deal with that also. Those are the pros and cons of spine surgery.
Thank you so much.
And thinking back about your professional journey, who do you think inspired you the most to become the surgeon who you are now?
Well, I mentioned the first two people was Jerry Kotler. He was a spine he passed away in my spine fellowship. And then my boss throughout my entire career until he passed away, 2018, was Richard Rothman. And I work at the Rothman Institute. So he was the perfect boss because he used to be a spine surgeon. He used to be a very famous spine surgeon. But then he had common sense and he decided he didn't need to have the aggravations of having people that continue to have back pain and neck pain. And he just didn't want to deal with things he couldn't fix. So he became a joint, a knee, and a hip surgeon, because he would say to me, if they have knee pain or hip pain, I can make them better and shake their hands and they can leave. But spine, it's a gift that keeps on giving. You do an operation, you make their leg pain better, but then they come back and they complain of back pain. And then you say to them, I can't help your back pain. Please help my back pain. I can't help your back pain. And then he would say he would get tortured by things he couldn't fix. So he was the third most important mentor. And then, and plus your parents are always, they're always your mentor, because you grow up, you try to emulate your parents, you try to be like them. They give you the work ethics, they give you your spiritual background. So those are the people, my parents, and then Rothman, Kotler, and Garfin. And then I'm sure, and then you get older, and then you say to yourself, do you have people that inspire you? Well, the people that inspire me now are you. Like the fact that you're doing this AOU thing is inspiring. I mean, it's phenomenal. I didn't do that when I was younger, and I think it's great. And you guys get it. I mean, you're learning from everybody. I mean, different generations think, well, I know how to do it. I don't need anyone else. But you're actually learning from everybody, and you have that respect for different age groups. I think it's great. So at my age, the people that inspire me are the younger people, because first of all, every time I meet someone who's young, I'm like, oh my God, they're so smart. I never would have gotten into orthopedics. I mean, you'll do the same. In about 15 years, you'll be like, my God, these young people are so smart, because you guys are. I mean, it's impressive. I don't. We were never. We didn't work as hard in terms of the academics. We didn't do as well on tests as you did. I mean, your generation is pretty impressive.
Thank you. And when you were talking about pros and cons of spine surgery, you mentioned the cost of it. So do you think the health system features, like public or private, can actually influence the work and the decisions of spine surgeons?
100%. So all of our systems are different. European system is totally different than the American system. So I'll give you an example of where I saw it having an influence. I train a lot of military surgeons in America, and they have budgets. And when they reach their budget limit, they're sort of limited on what they can do, unless it's an emergency. So that would scare me. And I saw that, I've seen that since the 90s, 2000s. If you're in a VA hospital system, and I worked in a VA hospital system, you could really only do one case a day because of resources and times. And that's changing. They're making the VA more efficient. In the hospital now, we're constantly going through systems. I just went through a whole process where they're limiting the vendors you can use. They have gone to shelf pricing. They're really cutting back on what they can afford. Now, they'll allow us to use it, but they're really decreasing the cost. So like any system, you get reimbursed a certain amount of money, and you have to decide what percentage of that money that you have can you put towards technology, such as spinal beds and spinal implants. And it's expensive, and then you may not be able to do the things you want to do. Spine surgery is one of the most expensive fields to go into. Now, joint arthroplasty is expensive, but different companies in different areas of the world are able to make those implants cheaper. But the innovation in spine surgery, like I use a robot every Wednesday. That robot is expensive, and it has disposables that you use, and a robot costs $1 million American to get into an operating room. So it's going to be a problem, but it's always been a problem. So there's ways of figuring out problems. It'll come down to what does society need, and then we'll figure out a way of paying for it. Hopefully, like in any system, you have unnecessary surgery, you have wasteful surgery, you have, and that's why they've developed systems such as prior authorization, oversight committees, and stuff like that. So the perfect world would be you only do spine surgery when you need to do spine surgery on the right patient at the right time in the right facility. And then we will figure out a way in terms of the economics to make it happen.
Thank you. And talking about patients, of course, every surgeon has that case, that memorable case. Do you have it? And can you share a bit about yours and the lessons you learned about it?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of cases because, I end up, my minimal schedule is 12 surgeries a week, 4, 4, and 4, but I usually do more. So, and then I never say no to anything, no matter how complex the surgery is. So I always, when I was younger, I always had the doctor I would go to if I had a complex problem. And then over time at the university, you become that doctor that people send the cases to. So I have a lot of memorable cases. So the things we remember the most are the cases that don't go well. I mean, that's good and bad. So you'll never forget your bad cases. So I remember certain intraoperative maneuvers I did where things didn't go well. I remember when I lost motor evoked potentials in certain really bad deformity cases that didn't go well. I remember people losing function permanently after surgery that didn't go well. So I'll give you like the cases that stick in my mind. I had a guy, and you may not never have heard of this. It's called melorrheatosis. Melorrheatosis. You probably never heard of it. It's a bone forming disease where they develop ossification within the spinal canal. And the ossification is tougher than regular bone. So you can't even burr through it. You take a burr and the burr breaks. And I had a person that had this in the thoracic spinal cord in the watershed area. I couldn't get it out. He was getting paralyzed. I used a burr, I used an osteotome, and he became paralyzed at the time of surgery. He became an Asia B. And I was like, oh my God, I just couldn't get it out. But through the maneuvering of getting it out, now, by the grace of God, he got his function back over time. So that case I'll never forget. I'll never forget cases of like really, really bad dislocated necks that like an ankylosing spondylitis or diffuse idiopathic scalar hyperostosis that just positioning them on the operating table, they lost function and they became quadriplegic. And then you realize the spine and fixed it, and they got their function. And then you tend to forget all the really good cases where people do really well because you're just so happy they do so well. And then you hug them and it's great. And then you forget about them. You don't forget the feeling, but you forget about the individuals because they did well. And there's certain people I remember that came in quadriplegic that we did surgery that walked again. So I remember those cases because that was like so dramatic that they had no function. But like anything in life, and I do this now, we always study our complications and our failures, and it makes you a better surgeon. Like what went wrong? What is the root cause analysis? And that I think that makes you the best surgeon. And it's more interesting when you go to a spine meeting. When I was younger, the older spine surgeons I would always laugh. Let me show you cases that I did that you can't do. And I'm like, why bother showing me those cases? Like these deformity surgeons would get up and show me crazy cases. And I'd be like, okay, I didn't learn anything. But when they got up and showed a case that it looked like I could do, and then something went terribly wrong, then I really learned from that. And then over time, you learn. So you learn from your mistakes as long as you're paying attention and as long as you care.
Thank you for sharing. And circling back about scientific societies and their importance, you are an AO Spine member, of course. Do you think, is it important in an academic, being in an academic community, and do you think it actually influenced your career?
Well, without a doubt, the AO was the most important academic society I belonged to for many different reasons. Even before you become a spine surgeon, and I don't know what they do today, but there's like the basic AO courses where they teach you how to use a drill, a tap, and a screw. Okay, so that was fun. So then all the residents get together and you travel to some place and you have fun when you're there, and you go out to dinner for the first time and you have a great time. So that was great. So you'll learn the basics and they teach it so well. So that was phenomenal. And then they had the AO spine, and then you're literally meeting the most famous spine people in the world. Now, it was better when I was younger because there was more money. So you would meet everybody. You go to Davos. Have you guys been to Davos yet? Have you seen that spine course in Davos, Switzerland?
Yeah, we are going to visit Davos very soon for me.
Yeah, I did it every single year, but now I don't do it anymore because they cut back on the funding because money's difficult. But I used to do it. So I would meet every famous spine surgeon in the world, and they would have advanced courses. It was just, and then you go to all the courses during the day, and then at night, you get together and develop networking, you have dinner. So the AO taught me everything. Like even to this day, I'm part of the AO knowledge forum groups, and we have advanced projects that we did a lot of the stuff that you see that I write about. So, I mean, by far, leaps and bounds, the AO is above everything I've ever done. And then the other societies that I really like, I like the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgery because, again, I just think it's great to get together with all the orthopedic surgeons. I like the Cervical Spine Research Society. I think that's phenomenal. You get together. So as you get older, like when I was younger, I went to every one of them. I went to the SRS, the ISLIS, CSRS, NAS. Now you get older, you don't have that much time. So I selectively choose. I usually go to the ones when they ask me to speak at it, I go. So CSRS just asked me to give a speech. I said yes. So that's when I go. When they ask me to speak, I go.
Nice. So following up to this, you're not only a renowned spine surgeon, you're also an educational leader and a researcher. How important do you think it is for a spine surgeon to engage also in research and education?
Well, I think it's extremely important. So how do I learn, or how do I master a topic? I learn and master a topic when I have to teach it. So you'll see when they ask you to give a talk on a topic, you're like, oh boy, oh boy. So now you have to go research it, and you have to ask friends for advice and slides, and then you have to practice it. And then after a while, it's like taking a test. Then you get to be really good on the topic. And I laugh all the time. People will call me up and ask me something, and I'll remember giving a lecture last year on that topic, and they think I'm an expert at it. They're like, "Oh my God, this guy's an expert." No, I just lectured on it. So when you lecture, and I take every lecture seriously. I always get bored when I see the same spine surgeons give the same lecture. Like, oh, I could almost tell you what the spine surgeon's going to lecture on. Oh, Joe Schmo is going to lecture. Oh, he'll probably talk about thoracic pedicle screws because that's the only thing he ever talks about. That's boring. That's boring. So people always ask me to speak on weird topics that are never the same. So I have to write the talk. So I have to do the research. I have to understand it. And then once I do the research and put the talk together, then I practice it. So every talk takes me a minimum of 4 hours. Minimum 4 hours. Because, and I always laugh, I go, wow, that's a lot of time for a talk. But you have to know it. And once you know it, then you can teach it. And you don't really have to look at your slides or anything. Like once you know it, then the slides become a trigger. And you learn how to keep slides simple, like a few lines, a few words on each line, or just images. But they're a trigger to you as a teacher, an educator, to communicate. The guys that get up there and have slides that have 1,000 words on each slide, that's not going anywhere because no one's absorbing that. People are too busy trying to read the first sentence before you go to the next slide. So that's why I think in anything you do, even if you decide not to go into academics, even if you decide to go to community practice, you have to teach. You have to teach the community, you have to teach the patients, you have to teach your staff, because then you become really good at it. And then research is great. I mean, research is great. Just say if you're in private practice and you did 100 of an operation that you think is great. What I learned early on is that you're not great. Like I would do this one operation. I'd be like, oh, everyone did great. Everyone did great because I didn't have any headaches from people coming back complaining. And then I decided to call all the patients back again to ask them how they did. And I was amazed how they all didn't do great. They didn't complain. They didn't come back to me and complain about the fact that they had problems, but they had problems. And so I'm like, wow, doing research and following up clinically on outcomes is so important to do. So even in private practice, I think it's great. But you become a better doctor if you teach what you do, because you're really learning. Like when I teach something that I do all the time, I go, oh, wow, I didn't know that. That's interesting. I just learned something. And I think the most important thing that you have to learn is you have to learn the anatomy cold. And you'll think you know the anatomy at your age. You think you know it, but you don't know it. Every 5 years, you learn it better. You just learn it better. You know exactly where everything is. You know exactly what everything does. And like even just decompressing the lateral recess in the foramen you'll get that down really good. Like as you get older, like you'll get it down. You think you know it now? It's not. It's complicated. You'll learn the anatomy and cervical spine, uncovertebral joint going out below the vertebral artery. You'll learn that anatomy cold. It's really cool.
Thank you for these insights. So coming back to your career, which is the achievement you're most proud of?
I'm most proud of, and I live it all the time now, is educating spine fellows that go out and make a difference in life. And then, so when I get together, I mean, I've been training fellows since 1993. So now when I see them publishing and doing great things and innovating, it's cool. So it's like watching your children grow up and doing great things. And they've done great things. So that's what I'm most proud of, is training the next generation of spine surgeons.
Nice. This is what you do also now with us.
Exactly. But I'll run into all you guys. Like we will run into each other probably at an AO course.
Yeah, sure.
Now I was just in Zurich. Was it last year I was in Zurich or the year before? Was it last year?
Yeah.
Were you there? Were you around? You were there, right?
Yeah.
I had a great time in Zurich. That was a great time. See, I'll never forget that. Now, we went out to dinner one night. Were you there to dinner that night?
Yeah.
You look like you were. But that was a great time.
Yeah.
Wasn't that?
It was fun, yeah.
That was
also being able to meet your wife and everyone. It was super nice.
great. Now, you're not a kite surfer, are you?
Yes, I am. I'm the one.
You're the kite surfer. I think that's so cool. And your boyfriend was a kite, right? Your boyfriend's a kite surfer. Yeah, I remember. I was so impressed. Still doing that?
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
so
impressive.
encounterments you right.
Wow.
So in this sense, if you could turn back time, which advice would you give your younger self or as a young spine surgeon?
All right. So again, you have to look back. I was married and divorced once, and then I got married again. So that was my biggest failure, because that's so it happens. It happens a lot to spine surgeons. So that would be my biggest. So if I could somehow, I mean, maybe I couldn't have changed it. Maybe it couldn't have changed the outcome of that relationship. And maybe because I worked too hard, but I think that I should have worked harder to make that relationship work, and it didn't work. So, and everyone gets affected by a marriage that falls apart. Everyone gets affected. So you may be like, oh, it's the best thing for us not to be married, but it does affect the children. It affects everybody. So I think that I could have done better, and I should have worked harder to figure out a way for that marriage not to fail. So I'm not focusing on medicine, because we always focus on medicine. We always focus on our job. And I guess when you become a priest, when you become a pilot, when you become a surgeon, your number one priority is to make sure that people are safe. And I guess we blame that on the fact that our family suffers because we're never around. So that's the most important thing. But I think your generation has figured it out, because I see your generation. You're well balanced, and the laws are better. The laws protect you now. I mean, America is still crazy with the 8 hours. I think in Europe it's like 40 something hours, right? But in America it's still insane how many hours they have to work. So, and that's not good for a family. It's not good, because I still think people work too hard. I think they should. I mean, you got to work as hard as you have to work to master your trade, to be safe. But that would be the most important thing, is the family. Don't lose sight of that, and no one talks about that enough.
That's very true.
Probably crying inside because you're breaking up with your spouse right now, and go, I got to change that. After I get off this phone, I got to be nicer to my spouse. But no, you have to really, like right now, I'm in the bathroom. I flew in from Alabama, so we're at a hotel, and I'm in the bathroom right now doing this interview with you, because if I walk outside, the hotel guests will see me, and I'm trying to be quiet in the bathroom so my family doesn't kill me.
That's hilarious. Okay, thank you for all that effort. So finally, to not take too much of your time, let's engage in a quick game in which we ask you a short question and you reply as fast and quick as you can with one word or one sentence. So some of them we might know already, but let's start. What's your favorite hobby?
Stamp collecting.
Okay, nice. We haven't had that yet. Your favorite book? You mentioned one already.
Well, the book I love, and I probably talked to you about it, was the book on Trujillo, the dictator of Dominican Republic. That's my favorite book. It just won the Nobel Prize for Literature. And of course, I can't remember the name. I'll never remember the names of the books. I try to read a book a week because I travel a lot. It was a Nobel Prize winning book on that dictatorship. And I only liked that book because his nephew became a friend of mine. So he was a ruthless dictator. And then his family, he was assassinated. They think the CIA assassinated him, and his family went all over the world. One family group went to America, and he grew up with me in my town. And he would always talk about his uncle. That's why I like that book.
Okay, we have to look it up. So the next one might be easy. Favorite sport and team?
Well, it's football and the Eagles. And I love them. Now, again, it all depends where you live. I live in Philadelphia, so the Eagles. But when I lived in New York, it was the Jets. When I lived in New Jersey, it was the Giants. But now I'm in Philly, so it's the Philadelphia Eagles.
Okay, nice. Your favorite surgery?
My favorite surgery is something that doesn't take any work at all. And that would be a single level anterior cervical disc arthroplasty or fusion. You will love that operation as you get older. Because you're not bending over, it's not stressful, it's microsurgical techniques is perfect.
Navigation or freehand?
Well, I'm a generation that we never use navigation, so we always do everything freehand. So I do everything freehand, and I'm using the robots on Wednesday because I think the technology is cool, and I'm going to continue to work with it until it really evolves. So it's in its infancy now, but I'm a freehand surgeon.
Open or MIS?
I hate MIS. So so we all evolved techniques to do smaller and smaller incisions. I just never got into the tubes. I just never got into it. And I never got into endoscopy because I see all the radiation exposure to the patient and to the surgeon. And then I've had at least 6 friends of mine who have developed cellular cancer. Like my partner in my group did MIS and he got cancer. So it's happening all the time. Like you may not know it. It's happening all over the place. So that's why I like the robot. So the robot makes me an MIS surgeon because the robot takes you to where the screw has to go and you have a little stab wound. So I always laugh that I'm the #1 MIS surgeon in my group now because I use the robot on Wednesdays. But I make small incisions. So, and again, you'll learn that the amount of time you take in an operating room determines the function of the patient after surgery. So if you're a safe, efficient surgeon and you minimize anesthesia time, those patients do great. If you're a slow MIS surgeon, those patients struggle. So radiation and tubes and scopes, I hate, but I do really small incisions to minimize collateral tissue damage.
Okay, and finally, one word that defines spine surgery.
Challenging. I was going to say exciting, innovative, rewarding, but it's challenging.
So thank you, Dr. Vaccaro, for sharing all these insights and information with us, and mentioning the place that you are talking from. It's not about the place. It's not about the time. We really care about the words and the wisdom that you gave us. So thanks for your time, and we are really thankful for AO and social platforms although you are 1,000 miles away from us, but we would like you to know that you have touched our souls as young surgeons. And for me, you were just one of the reasons for me just to get into spine surgery. And I believe that it is the same for many surgeons all around the world. So thank you so much for joining us today and for being a source of inspiration and motivation for young surgeons of our AO Spine Youth Club community. It has been really a true privilege. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Let's do it again next week. Only kidding. Only kidding. It was great. I enjoyed it. It was phenomenal.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Let me stop the recording.